The 2015 Polyglot Gathering is brought to you by italki. Become fluent in any language.
I'm going to talk about Cantonese and how to use it as a key to the other Sinosphere languages. So here we have the Sinosphere, Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, and Vietnam. In the Middle Chinese times, China was a powerhouse with lots of influence in this area. And the main written language was literary Chinese, which was used all over this place. And the local languages adopted lots of loanwords from Middle Chinese, and even the system of forming words with Chinese characters. We can use Chinese, Middle Chinese readings to predict what readings will be. Because Cantonese has many Middle Chinese features, we can use even modern Cantonese to predict many things. So these are the initial consonants in Cantonese. I put velar nasal in brackets because it's not always used anymore. For example, you can have outside is ngoi, and most people will just say oi. And the N is also in brackets because it's merged with L, more or less. But you will still find some people who insist on saying n and ng instead of l and nothing. And you can see the final consonants are the same actually as in Middle Chinese, although there is some merging going on here as well. If we use this as a basis, I'm going to show to what degree we can predict the same in a few other languages. But we also can't forget tones because they are one of the most important parts of this. Cantonese has 6 tones, but these are sometimes counted separately. These come from the 4 tonal categories of Middle Chinese, where you had level, rising, departing, and then entering is simply the category of syllables that end in phonetic, so that they form a separate category because syllables ending in phonetic can't have different tones. So in Middle Chinese, but they can in Cantonese, but not in Middle Chinese, and so they're counted separately for that reason. And in modern Cantonese, tone 1 has 2 variants in some dialects, but in Hong Kong only 1. And also tone 4 has a variant, so the standard one is low and falling, and there is a variant that is simply low and flat, very low and flat. We have some mergers here that I've indicated. So in Cantonese romanization, this historical merger is usually not indicated, but in place names in Hong Kong, like on signs and stuff, you will still see that they will write, for example, SH for historical sh, and not just s, even though they pronounce it s. I mentioned the merger of N and L, and there is some merger of final N into N, and final and into which is you can use it if you want, but it's not considered as nice as not merging them. And there is this initial loss. I put it in these quotation marks because it's not a complete loss, because they tend to, when they're speaking formally, they tend to use it, but then they tend to just extend it to any syllable that originally didn't have an initial.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And so his example is very good because it's the one where you meet it the most. Oi is love, but they were saying moi because they think that it should have this initial. But historically it didn't. And there is one that is not so well. This is actually historical as well, but it's not murder. So Middle Chinese final M's dissimilate into N instead if the initial is also a label. But it doesn't actually affect that many characters. But I had to put it there anyway, and the same goes for Middle Chinese but. Both of which are labials, and they dissimilate from labial initials. But the reason this is important is because in Korean and Vietnamese, for example, they don't change into N and T. So they actually stay as M and P. Here are some example characters. So Bap and Bap would both be Bap with mergers, and Lei would be Lei, and so on. And there are some tones that will make the task of predicting tones a little bit difficult because although Bean, the first one here, should be Dao, is actually Dao. So in Mandarin, if you were to assume that it was the second tone in Cantonese originally, you would get the wrong tone because you should get Do instead of Do. And the same goes for these. Because they have changed tones, you can't, without knowing the original tone, you can't accurately predict. But some dictionaries will indicate it. For example, Cantodict will indicate whether a tone is originally second tone or not, by using this notation here with the apostrophe.
So what you're saying is that, for instance, Dao is pronounced as sixth tone, but that originally it's second tone.
Oh no, the other way around.
The other way around.
Yes.
It's pronounced with second tone, and originally it's sixth.
Exactly. So that's what the apostrophe means. You have the original one on the left, and the apostrophe, and then the tone that is actually pronounced with. Yes.
Okay.
And then there are some reasons for why you would use Cantonese for this instead of something else. And it retains many features, and some of the features that it doesn't retain, it has reflexes of. So the fact that it has so many tones is because there was a split. So in Middle Chinese, you could predict whether tones would be high or low based on what initial they had. But then, because the difference between plosives and fricatives that were voiced and voiceless disappeared, then the fact that they had different tones became the sole distinguishing factor. So then you suddenly had double the amount of tones that you had before. So you can predict whether there will be voiced initials in Wu Chinese, for example, based on the fact that they have low tones in Cantonese. So you have relatively consistent tones, except for the changed tones, of course. The tones are relatively consistent, so if you know the tone of a character, it will not change. Like in Mandarin, sometimes the third tone will change into the second tone based on being written near another tone, another third tone. But in Cantonese, you don't get that. It's minus spoken. You do have sound changes and modern mergers, and it's also not an official written language, but they're not very grave disadvantages. Other candidates might be Mandarin because it's official and more widely spoken and prestigious. Middle Chinese would offer no detours. You could just map the readings directly from Middle Chinese because sometimes the Middle Chinese finals fall together in modern varieties, including Cantonese. and especially initials. Cantonese is not actually that rich in initial consonants. But they both have some disadvantages. For example, Mandarin is radically different from it, and it has only 2 of the original final consonants instead of 6. And it has a new one, but that doesn't really help you. And Middle Chinese is not spoken anymore, so that's also not very useful.
Excuse me, could you, for a layman who doesn't speak any of these languages, explain why it being radically different from Middle Chinese and that it retains few final consonants, why that would be negative?
Oh yeah, it's only if you want to map from this language to other languages in the vicinity.
Okay, but if
Oh, of course, you should still learn Mandarin. Don't worry, yeah, you should still learn it. It's just that you can't use it to predict final consonants in other varieties.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you should learn Middle Chinese as well, but not to speak with people.
I can speak with you.
I can't speak Middle Chinese, sorry. Okay. Oh no. Okay, this is supposed to be a lighter color than this. But okay, so
Yeah, it is.
See from here, it is a lighter color.
Very lighter.
oh good. That's good then. From here they look the same. But okay, so the ones that are in dark green, they are the ones that are almost always really easy to predict. So you can, if you know that it's supposed to be N in Cantonese, then in like 99% of the cases it will be N in Mandarin as well. This is Cantonese to Mandarin, by the way. And the ones that are in yellow are the ones that have, you know, you have to have a note attached to it saying that it's not always like that, but you generally have very few candidates to choose from. So if you have, for example, this in a Mandarin k usually maps to a Cantonese k, but sometimes it also maps to Cantonese f, for example. So that you can know almost what sound it will be, but you have a few candidates. But it's still easy to remember. And these ones I've marked like this because not all romanization systems will indicate the difference between sh and s, as I said before. But you could indicate it, and in that case it would be green. And for the final consonants, you can see that there are only 2 of the original plus 1 new one. I marked it in red because you can't predict it because it's new. And none of these. Oh, I put that wrong. That's supposed to be
plosives.
obstruent. And then nasal becomes alveolar. So just what we saw before with M becoming N when the initial is labial, but across the board. So Cantonese final M always becomes N in Mandarin. And then, oh yeah, I already mentioned some of these. Yeah, so here's an example of F in Cantonese becoming K in Mandarin, Phi and Quai. And then there is M and W, and Y, R. So there are some sounds that just exist in pairs like this. And an interesting one is sh and O. It's supposed to have aspiration. Chang, not Zheng, but the Chang. And my favorite part is the tones. So we saw the tones in Cantonese are very easily mapped to these Middle Chinese categories, and we can see that these tones are very straightforward. They're easily mapped to this map, but then some like this changes to this one, this changes to this one. But in the case of obstruents, so you have continuants, which are sounds that you can continue saying, and so on. No, wait, sorry, not continuants are the sounds that you can continue saying without friction. And the obstruents are the ones that have friction. So zh, for example, has friction. And the ones that have friction, they will become this tone. So they will become this, but then this, which is falling. So for this category, you can have a syllable like mean will be mian in Mandarin, because it's the third tone and it has as the initial, which is a continuant. And then for an obstruent, you can have shai, which becomes shu in Mandarin, falling tone, because it starts with an obstruent. And the same with these. If this syllable starts with a continuant, then it will be the second tone. No, wait, sorry, the other way around. No, wait, yeah, continuant. It will be the fourth tone. Lo, liu. And if it has the an obstruent, it will become the second tone. So the opposite of what it says here. It will be, for example, song. No, wait. Yeah, for example, sec would be shi. And then there's this category, which is totally random. So if you know that that one is in this category in Cantonese, you can't predict it in Mandarin. High entering tones can't be predicted. Continuing versus obstruent. Yes. Okay. Here are some numbers just to illustrate. So you can see the same number generally maps to the same diacritic in pinyin. But in the case of the last few, you can't accurately predict it. Although these two do have the right tone, you can't predict that they will. But this one has an obstruent initial, so it will have rising tone, sa, shi, and lo, liu, falling. And Cantonese to Korean is, it's more useful to know Cantonese and then Korean than to know Cantonese and then Mandarin, because you will get all the final consonants, except for this, the ones that change to dentals. So m to n or b to d. But very few characters actually have this change. So you could mark all of them just green. And yeah, for this, Cantonese doesn't distinguish these two, so you can't know or automatically that it will be that. And only one character will have this sound, and only in North Korea, to separate wonsu, enemy, from wonsu, which is the title, one of the titles of Kim Il-sung. And the other ones are basically because usually you can't necessarily predict whether it will be aspirated or not in Korean from the Cantonese. But the Middle Chinese, Middle Korean tones are entirely predictable from Cantonese. They borrowed just 4 categories, well, 3, because the entering tones are the same as the departing tones. And actually, this category is split in Cantonese, so that you have short vowels become higher tones, and long vowels become mid-tones. But if they weren't split, then I think that all of them would be mid-tones, because then they would also be the same as the departing tones in Cantonese. And as we will see, this is also the case in Vietnamese. They also have the same tones for departing and entering. Modern standard Korean doesn't have tones, but these are for Middle Chinese, Middle Korean. I thought it was just very interesting. And yeah, tense consonants are generally not used in Korean readings of Chinese characters, but you have the case of wonsu, and aspiration is unpredictable. Oh yes, I should mention that Cantonese final T becomes in Korean. This is probably because in Old Mandarin, which had not lost the consonants yet.
Modern Korea? Is it modern Korea? Middle Korea?
This is modern. Only the tones were for Middle Korean, because modern Korean doesn't have those. Well, modern standard Korean doesn't have those. And Cantonese final T becomes because in Old Mandarin you had a weakening of the T, so maybe something like pat would be par or something like that. And so they borrowed it as because that was the closest thing they had. But it's entirely predictable. You can just change any T to and the other tones are for Middle Korean. Some examples, so you can see I haven't marked any tones because they are entirely predictable and not used anymore. But you can see the final consonants and for example sam is sam and ling is belong and so on. And for Japanese, actually, most of this would be green, but Japanese borrowings happen in several ways. So, depending on whether it's a so-called goon or a kangon or something else, it will have a different initial. Not really different final. Well, yeah, sometimes actually. But so, for example, if it's in Cantonese, it can be either or b in Japanese, but theoretically it would be both, but usually only one of them will be used. So you can know them, but you will not know which one will be used in a particular word. And that goes for something like N as well, because it can be the, depending on which reading was successful historically. And these, you can argue that these are not phonemic, but I included them anyway. Just because I feel that the best analysis is that they are phonemic. And yeah, for the final consonants, we also have the same here. And this is interesting because if you know that it has Middle Chinese, yes. Then it will be in Japanese as well. But because of this assimilation with the labial initials, sometimes you will get N in Cantonese, and then you may not know that it will be it's that one, but it will still be actually. So maybe that should be. And for this, you get basically you get a longer vowel in most cases, where they borrowed just for as u, and then in most cases that becomes a long vowel in modern Japanese. Even if it's after, for example, a, it will become o. So almost all cases it will be o actually. And the same with the initial p, it will become just long u because it was borrowed as p, and then p developed into p, and then it got lost between vowels. And in character readings, it's always between vowels, so it always lost, and just leaves a long u. And for these, it's a case of they just need an epithetic vowel, because you can't really you're not allowed to end anything in a consonant except in Japanese. So you have to add either u or e to the reading to make it Japanese. In most cases u, but sometimes also e. For example, the character for one will be ichi. And not itsu. Well, sometimes it will be itsu actually. So the main waves are goon and kangon, One of the most important differences is that gong will distinguish voicing. So if you know that it's a low tone in Cantonese, you will know that the gong reading in Japanese will be voiced. Whereas the canon, the canon, they will not distinguish voicing in obstruents. For example, will still be voiced, of course, but not, for example, g. Let's see, we have tone height. Oh yeah, for the voicing, yes.
The voicing would depend on whether it's at the beginning, if it's has a sound before it.
Yes, sometimes it will. But that's per word though, so it's not like the single character.
Oh.
Yeah. So of course the voicing from words you can't predict from Cantonese either way. Yeah. The naku, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you can't predict that from Cantonese. And here you can see the logic behind becoming So it would have been borrowed as, for example, or something like that, and just become And here we have the sequence of pu at the end of a syllable. Just going to from pu. And here are some examples with so you can see. Maybe you can download it, I think, so you can have a closer look if you want. And I will present quickly the Vietnamese tones as well, because actually all the tones of Vietnamese are mapped to Chinese characters. So you have the level tone in voiceless and voiced continuous. For this, for example, you will have an M first. So and then it will be the mid-tone in Vietnamese. I just put numbers to them. I don't know if these are generally used, the numbers, but they will be the ngang tone. So for example, something like meng in Cantonese will be meng in Vietnamese. And if it has an obstruent, it will be a different tone. Actually, I don't know the tones of Vietnamese. Yeah, you do?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you call the second tone?
Well, we got,
maybe you don't really use
so
it.
saxo wind, well, depends, yeah, saxo wind, but I don't, they're not numbered though. Vietnamese don't
Yeah.
go by numbers.
Okay, yeah.
Không dấu, so saxo wind, so hỏi, so ngã, so nã.
Okay, because I just found the list and just put numbers on, in the order the list was in, yeah. But
They have one tone that they say is not a tone, but it is a tone because it is not.
you mean because they have like glotalization and stuff in it?
No, because
No, because it's a level tone.
it's a mid tone.
You don't actually have to,
Oh, yeah. But that's the number one here on this list.
they say không dấu.
Oh, actually, I can just check because I have, I have example characters, so I can just check actually. Okay, so it will be the hook. Hook above is the second one. And the rising will have 3 or 4, so that's, it doesn't display correctly, does it?
What's that?
On this side, but they go in order of tones, so you will know it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then sap will be 6, and lok as well. And you can see that they are the same for the Hui Sang. Yeah. And
we do not use the kinds of, this is kind of like Sino-Vietnamese,
Yeah,
we don't use it.
they use that in temples and stuff.
Huh?
They use that in like temples.
Yeah. You don't generally write it in characters, but you should.
French decided they should.
But they should anyway, because it would be easier for me. You can see that this third tone will be the same as the third tone here. So and ba, yeah, and the sixth tone here, which is this one, will be the same as these ones. So actually, I don't know why it has 2 here, but you know, sometimes there is irregularity.
Well, in spoken conversation a lot they use ni.
Yeah.
But ni is like if, again, like you're going to.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So
Those are two different, yeah, they're the same, but they're different.
Yeah. Yeah, they are similar though, so yeah.
Well, one is like very official, royal, majestic, and the other is what you use in normal conversation. Yi is the first one is you'll say like tu yi the second.
Okay.
Like that. So.
So I can understand that one because it sounds like Cantonese.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, in Saigon they had a lot of Cantonese, so.
Oh yeah. They probably have a lot of Southerners. Well, Southern Chinese people.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, all of the tones are predictable as long as they follow the regular pattern. Which we have just seen is not always the case, but probably if you look at temples,
So just speak Vietnamese and temples is the takeaway.
Yeah, in the temple you actually have to be able to read the Chinese, so.
yeah.
Well, they do write it like that, don't you? So.
Yeah. In the temples, right?
Yeah, they put the Chinese characters, but when they write it out, they don't use Chinese characters, they write.
Yeah, like in normal
Roman,
conversations, no, not conversations, but in normal writing, they don't really use Chinese characters anymore, yeah.
But it's Chimon, it's changed, it's Vietnamese style.
Yeah, but they have lots of made in Vietnam characters too, but
Yeah.
the lowers from Chinese, they're all in, you know, normal
It's amazing,
Chinese characters.
amazing.
Well, not anymore, but you know, if they were still writing in.
Well, they had one way of writing that they wrote in Chinese but used Vietnamese grammar.
Yeah, and then they invented lots of characters for the, you know, stuff that they didn't borrow from the Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're really cool though. I haven't learned them personally, but I want to. An example of Chinese is Shanghainese. And actually, although we put lots of tones here, you only need to know the difference between these two. Otherwise, you can infer from whether it's voiced and ending in not glottal stop or glottal stop. Whether it's unvoiced and ending in glottal stop, or you know, if it's a voiceless initial ending not in a glottal stop, then you have to know whether it's this one or this one. But otherwise, yeah. But if you do know that it's a tone 1 in Cantonese, then you know it's a tone 1 in Chinese as well. So most of the tones are entirely predictable, and if you know Cantonese, all of them are. Some example characters here. I don't speak Chinese actually, but I'm not going to try to pronounce it. But actually this one is interesting.
I want you to pronounce the number 5.
Okay. I think it will be, but I'm not sure. This variant, I don't know if it's common, but it was listed when I looked it up, so I included it. But maybe it starts with a glottal stop. I'm not sure because it has tone 2, so it shouldn't be able to just start with a vowel. But yeah. Oh, by the way, the Q is a glottal stop. So, do we have any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What was the 4th character from the top, the complicated one? I've never seen that before.
I think the low.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Zero.
Good question. This is the 0.
Oh,
Zero, yeah.
okay.
I try to use all numbers for the examples because they are easy to recognize. But actually, 0 is not used so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. We talked a lot online, you know, recently.
Oh yeah.
What I'm very interested in is if you look at Vietnamese, Korean, and Japanese, and you look at the pronunciation of kanji-based words, you know, which is like anywhere between, let's say, 40 to 70% of vocabulary in these languages, you're going to find that the pronunciation between even Vietnamese and Japanese or Korean is more similar than it is to Putonghua and Mandarin.
Yeah.
Would you say that because it's a Cantonese influence, or other southern dialects influence?
No, it's Middle Chinese. You can map them really easily to Middle Chinese finals and.
Also, it's Middle Chinese. Well, it depends when they adapt.
Obviously, but the Middle Chinese is used in a strict sense for specific readings of characters that were standardized, and in a wide sense for like a period of the language stage. Like nynorsk is used for the specific written language in Norway, and also for the current period of modern
What
Norway.
I'm thinking of, for example, various Jehun and Kekon and the Korean and Vietnamese and Japanese are similar, but it doesn't sound like Jehun. So why is it? Why are you getting the sounds why are the consonants the same amongst Vietnamese, Korean, and Japanese or similar?
Yeah. Well,
you're saying because Middle Chinese?
Yeah, they borrowed from approximately the same source. And not exactly the same source, but approximately. So around the same time. So maybe 100 years.
So they kept that pronunciation while Chinese changed.
Yeah. So they were writing in literary Chinese. So and they pronounced it with their local speech. So they had to adapt it kind of to fit. And then you have further sound changes to modern Japanese and modern Korean and modern Vietnamese, but in general they keep quite well. So you can still predict a lot. You could also just learn Middle Chinese directly. But it's easier and more useful to learn Cantonese. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you already said because I missed the beginning, but why did like Putonghua change so much from Middle Chinese?
Well, it was not
a loppy pronunciation.
I don't think they changed it on purpose.
I think it was about Mongol, and because the Mongols invaded them right from the north, so the southern people kept their original pronunciation.
It's possible that this has something to do with it, and there is a tendency for standard languages to be simpler than non-standard ones, non-standardized ones. But I don't know if it's because of this or if that's a coincidence or not. But it has lost the features that it has, but it has kept initials quite well. So you have a three-way distinction: s, sh, xi. Well, you don't have sh, but you have xi.
So why would northern Vietnamese be fricative and southern be
not fricative?
Glides like z and yeah.
There are a lot of theories about that because the southern Vietnamese were they went down over time and they were separated a lot from the north, so they kind of developed their own by mixing with the anything from Quy Nhon down was Cambodia. In that middle area you had the Cham people, so the southern Vietnamese had a lot of outside influences that the northern Vietnamese didn't have. The northern Vietnamese were very coherent and the southern Vietnamese were very mixed. So that could be it.
But I'm referring to letters that are always pronounced. This is like D8, za, ya, and GI and za, ya.
Well, if you listen to people in Vietnam, what they call the very further south people, they call them the Western people. And they even simplify their tones and everything. It sounds like they're ya, 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 ya all the time. Yeah, you can hardly make it out no matter, you have to grow up there to hear it.
Well, maybe you can, because I know you speak Vietnamese well.
He seems to speak better than I do.
But
she's probably better than me.
I'm
No, it's like
center.
Oh, gosh, that makes it much
Yes.
Okay.
I have heard that the center is more difficult to understand.
Yeah.
Not for
I
him.
can understand more than other than seven.
Yeah. The middle of Vietnam is like the Norway of Scandinavia.
Well, the northerners and southerners tell me they can understand you guys in the center. and I can't very well either.
But
they
Norwegians and Swedes say that Danish is the hardest of the three languages.
Because you have to swallow.
Yes, but the Norwegians understand their neighbors better than the neighbors understand them.
Yeah.
So that's why I compared it
that's
to
why.
that. But I don't know if it is comparable. I don't speak Vietnamese.
No. Scandinavian, yes. Vietnamese, no.
No.
Actually, in my presentation, I have a section where I show northern, southern, and central.
Oh yeah.
So you'll hear it.
Okay, good. Do you have any?
Is it possible to get this presentation?
Yes.
Because I would like to watch it again at home.
Yes, I kind of sped through the examples especially. So if they don't like put it out on their own, then I will do it. So
Super.
Yeah. Is everyone in the Facebook group for the Polyglot Gathering or?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can put it there. Yeah. And then you can share with your friends and
And it will go viral. Everyone.
So like, share, and subscribe, everybody. But I will also fix the mistake in the.
I think your analysis is amazing. I've never thought of it that way. I mean, you're good at predicting things.
But it's not that I invented this. It's,
yeah, no. Yeah.
You invented the whole Sinosphere language group.
Yes. I can't take credit.
A massive social experiment.
Well, if I could invent it, maybe I would. But
do you think when you're trying to learn one of these other languages, do you think you're actually going to explicitly think about these rules when you're trying to?
Oh, I do.
You do.
Yeah. Well,
I do that when speaking European languages, so and I think most here recognize that.
Yeah. You try to look for patterns, right?
Yeah.
And the human brain is really good at looking for patterns. So we will find them even if they're not there. Yeah.
Here's a fun question. Do you think the tones there will be less and less tones gradually over time?
Not necessarily, but maybe.
Are there some theories about that? Or it seems that
not that I know of, but
it seems that from this presentation, tones get simplified over time.
Well, we saw that in Middle Chinese actually they suddenly doubled. So, but in Cantonese there has been sort of a modern tonogenesis. Well, not that modern, but you have a split in tone one, right? And in some dialects, that's a phonemic tone. So you have a difference between high falling and high flat tone. Yeah, high level tone. In Hong Kong you don't, and I think in Macau as well. But some people in Guangzhou, for example, they will distinguish them.
What about in Japanese? The difference between hashi?
Oh yeah.
That's called pitch accent.
I don't think that's related to the Chinese tones. It would have been cool if it was, but I don't think they are
modern
Chinese
stress,
tones.
so
In Japanese, that's regional. So in different dialects in Japan, they have different pitch accents.
Or different realizations of the pitch accent.
Yeah.
Like Swedish, I think, does that
too.
too.
The bridge and the edge of it.
Yeah, but those are only a few words. Those tend to be the same, but actually every word in Japanese has pitch accent. But it varies by region. So
Yeah.
But actually, I want to ask you.
Okay.
Is there some kind of pitch accent patterns that differ in Chinese loans?
What do you mean exactly?
Chinese loans tend to be one syllable anyway, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, unless they have cool.
Yeah, I think I'm not that familiar with other dialects. I speak like the Tokyo dialect.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot. It's mostly I think the native Japanese words that tend to be really different.
Yeah,
like for example, the word mountain in standard Japanese is yama, but like in the Kansai dialect is yama. So it's a lot of words like that.
Yeah.
So I speak Hakata, and it's more just your total intonation, like the shitoya, nanshoto. It's a rhythm.
Okay, but do you have any patterns in the Chinese loans? Because
you mean like
by the way,
when you combine like un tercer Berrjod or something like that, or?
Yeah, no, like can you predict?
I'm
like
not
if it has bang, for example, then it will be this tone or that tone, or yeah.
Well, see, I don't know how to classify it. I
think it depends on how many syllables are in the word too. Like if you take 2 words and you make a compound word, that will change the pitch accent.
But there is no way to predict it from the
shape of the word.
I don't think so.
No, I think it's like a native Japanese thing, and they just borrow them
The
independently.
meaning is different though. I mean, you can combine 2 characters, and if you pronounce it one way, it's one meaning. Pronounce it another way,
yes,
it's another meaning. So.
Yes, it's very fun to learn Japanese because of this. But in Korea, actually, they also have dialects of the preserved tones, but I think those may be totally independent from this as well, because the Middle Chinese tones the Middle Korean tones may have died out.
Your stress will depend on whether you have long vowel or short vowel. Right?
Yes, that is preserved, and actually this. Oh yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Because these tones that were mapped to Korean, for the rising tones, they will have long vowels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And although most solites today do not distinguish long and short vowels, you can still know whether they were long by them having a rising tone in Cantonese, which is really cool.